Hey everybody, I am Matt McMann. Welcome to Hey, I Know Them, where I interview an author that I know. And today I'm super excited to be able to talk with the one, the only, the amazing Joanne Levy. Joanne, how are you?
I am great. How are you, Matt?
I am great. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh,
Hey,
thanks for having me.
everybody, I want you to know that Joanne is the author of numerous books for young people, including Double Trouble and the middle grade novels Crushing It and the award-nominated Small, Medium, at Large, which remains one of my favorite book titles of all time. But today we're going to be talking about your newest book, Joanne, Fish Out of Water. There it is. Thank you for holding that up. I would be holding it up at this point, but I only have the digital art, so it's a little bit trickier for me to hold up.
And this is my one and only art. So we're waiting for finished copies still.
Fantastic. I want to tell everybody I'm going to do something interesting and unique, a little bit of a fun surprise at the end of this video, which will actually also be a surprise for you, Joanne. So be afraid. Yeah. But if you want to stick around for that, because it's a lot of fun. I've really been looking forward to talking with you. One, because you're a great writer. Two, because you're a great human. And three, because you have written such a great book. I loved Fish Out of Water.
Thank you.
And I read it in one shot, not only because it's a shorter book, but because I was so engaged by it. It made me laugh, it made me cry at the sweetness and the honesty of it. And it left me with a really hopeful feeling, which, given everything that's going on in the world at this moment, a little bit of hope goes a long way. So let's start off by you telling us a little bit about the premise of Fish Out of Water.
Great, thanks. Fish Out of Water is about a boy named Fish, Fishel, and he doesn't like to do regular boy things like his friends do. He doesn't like hockey, he doesn't like sports, watching them or doing them, and he likes dancing and he likes crafts and he wants to learn how to knit. And when he says to his grandmother, his bubby, will you please teach me how to knit? She says, knitting isn't for boys. And so basically the premise of the book is Fish wanting very badly to learn how to knit, and for good reasons, not just because he wants to do it for his own enjoyment, but he has a plan too. And him getting sort of turned away by the people that love him most. And even though they're well-meaning, they don't exactly get where Fish is coming from. And deep down, Fish knows better, and he knows to trust himself and to be who he wants to be. And so in that way, he learns a bit more about himself, and he teaches the people around him a little more about him and maybe what's most appropriate for him.
Yeah, that's such a great synopsis of the story. But one of the things that jumped out and surprised me about this book was how funny it is. Like, here's one of my favorite lines. My grandmother was famous for her socks. She knitted them from special yarn, and each pair was one of a kind. Well, two of a kind, I guess. And I just thought that was funny. Maybe it's because I have a 12-year-old sense of humor. But I thought it was just legit funny, and I like that it was funny in a way that's authentic to a 12-year-old who's Fish's age, your narrator. So let's talk a little bit about humor and what role humor plays in your writing. Is that something that you set out intentionally to include, or does that come organically in the writing process?
I would have to say both. I love making people laugh. I've always liked making people laugh. I was a bit of a class clown when I was a kid. And probably if I was in a class now, I'd be the class clown. So it's always there. I would rather make readers laugh than cry. If I can do both, great. But I'll do just about anything for a laugh. So yes, I want my books to be funny. Even books that aren't necessarily funny need to have humor in them. And I find that maybe not this book isn't the darkest book, but in dark books, you need a bit of a breather. Readers need a break from high tension. So if you can insert even just a tiny joke or a running gag, or I think that's important. People like to laugh. Kids love to laugh. And I keep hearing that there aren't enough funny books. So maybe I'm filling a void there. But yeah, it's completely intentional. And I've been told I'm a funny person. It feels weird saying that, but
You are. It's true.
thank you. Um, so it's my natural writing thing to put humor in wherever I can. A funny story about this book, when I was talking with my editor, she wanted me to take out the part about Carla, the bus driver's purse. There was there's a running gag about Fish sitting next to the purse in the bus, and she wanted to take it out, and I said, no, that part's funny. I like it. And every time I read it, I laugh. So,
Yep.
I go with my instincts and try to instill humor where I can. So.
Well, you're very good at it. So you have good instincts.
Thank you.
So Orca Books published this particular novel. And from what I understand, Orca sort of specializes in books for struggling or reluctant readers. So can you talk a little bit about what's unique about your book and about the Orca line that helps kids get over those reading hurdles?
For sure, yeah. What's great about Orca, they do several lines that are specifically for readers, English as a second language readers with maybe learning challenges. So they're geared towards the age level of the kids, so it's more mature content, but a lower reading level, so it's more accessible. So the Currents line, which both Fish and Double Trouble are a part of the Currents line, are short books. They're about 16,000 words, about 1,000 words a chapter. So there are guidelines, and they're typically not a lot of compound sentences, not a lot of big fancy words or flowery language, which suits me great because I didn't have to do much to fit my book into the Currents line. I mean, this is how I write. I write short, I write snappy, not a lot of flowery language, which is great for other people, but for these books, it's more about the story, I think. And getting kids excited about reading about kids their age, but at a bit of a lower level if they're struggling a bit. So, I mean, that's basically what Orca is doing. And what's great about Fish, it's one of their first books that are coming out this fall with the dyslexia-friendly font and the different formatting to make it even more accessible for more kids. So I'm really proud to be with them. They do a great job, and they're just wonderful human beings. And they're known for their diversity, and they do just great things. They're Canadian, but they distribute in the States pretty widely too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
well, everyone knows how wonderful Canadians are.
Yes,
so
we're lovely.
You do a wonderful job in this book of weaving Fish's Jewish heritage into the story. Was that something that was influenced by your own background? And if so, how?
Yes and no. Well, I'm Jewish and Fish is Jewish, and I was raised pretty culturally Jewish, not extraordinarily religious, but I identify as Jewish, and I am Jewish through and through. So as I get older and I see what goes on in the world, I think it's more and more important to get more diversity out there. And when I see anti-Semitism on the rise, and I see just the crazy things that go on in this world, I think we need to normalize people that aren't like us. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that in the U.S., I think it's 2 or 3% of the population is Jewish, but something ridiculous like 50% of hate crimes are against Jewish people. So we need to normalize being Jewish. We need to show non-Jewish people that Jewish people are normal, and we may worship at a different place or eat some different foods, but we're all the same inside. So it's become more and more important to me to write authentic Jewish characters and characters that just happen to be Jewish. So that's where that comes from. It's when I first started writing, I wrote sort of, I don't want to say bland, but just anybody, and probably not Christian or Jewish,
Right.
or Muslim, or, just somebody without that sort of faith or affinity. But now it's more important to me than ever that I put those people in my books. They represent me, they represent other kids out there, and they show kids that aren't Jewish and that may not know Jews that this is who we are, and we're just regular people.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I
Thank you.
applaud you for doing that, and you do it so well. Yeah, it was
Thank you.
beautiful. In this book, you directly challenge traditional gender stereotypes, but you managed to do it in a really disarming way. And you somehow struck this incredible balance of showing both how harmful it can be to force and impose traditional gender stereotypes on kids, but also the flip side, showing how freeing and life-giving that it can be when we allow and even encourage kids to pursue their passions, whatever they may be. And for example, you referenced earlier, Fish, the main character, is a 12-year-old boy who likes knitting and Zumba with old people, which was hilarious. And it's awesome. And I just love that. Was that theme something you had clearly in mind when you sat down to write this book, or did that emerge in the writing process?
Well, I am a bit of a pantser, so I'm one of these people who does not outline. But I sold this book on a concept to Orca. So that was front and center. Absolutely.
Okay.
I wanted this book to be about what it ended up being about. And, I struggled with a few of the details. And just as a side note, I found when I was doing some research about knitting, that there was a big war effort for the Second World War where a bunch of men did knitting for soldiers.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure it was Second World War. I'd have to look it up. But I was going to include that where somebody was going to say to Fish, oh, it's okay to knit because men did it in the Second World War. It was the war effort. And then I thought, no. I don't want to justify it. I want it to make absolutely, he wants to knit, and there's no reason why he shouldn't. So I deliberately left that detail out. I mean, my intent was to do it with a light hand because it is for younger kids, and I didn't want it to be, a dark issue book. But at the same time, it was important to me to just, show that it's cool to do what you want to do. And
Yes.
and sometimes our parents are well-meaning, or our families, and just, they get stuck in the past.
Yep.
Stereotypes, even though they should know better, or they can do better. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest. We can all do better. Let's
Sure.
show them how to do better. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you handled that potentially dicey issue with a very deft hand.
Thank you.
It came off so well and so honest and real, but also laid out a clear path for, hey, here's how we can do this better. And here's what can happen if we choose to do it better. So it was
and
wonderful.
Thank you. And we have to start, before we turn these kids into, turning them off of things they might like to do. I mean,
Yes.
I've long said that, the problems in our world right now are we're not doing right by our kids. We're not. We need to start there. I mean, there are Band-Aid fixes, but I think we need to start with the kids. And it's important to me to teach critical thinking and empathy and
Yes.
and do right by them, so they grow up to be functioning humans that leave a better world behind.
Well said. Well said. Yeah. I will add nothing to that because you said it so perfectly. Another thing that stood out to me about Fish Out of Water was you so authentically write a 12-year-old's thought process and emotions. And as an aspiring middle grade author myself, I was so impressed by that. So my question is, do you have any tips, or do you have a process that you follow to write authentic middle grade characters?
Yes, don't grow up. I think that's part of it, and I think one part of it that helps me is that I don't have kids, and I don't feel like I ever inject, oh, don't do that, or you shouldn't do that, because do you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
parental thing that hangs over you sometimes. But as I get older, I mean, there's more censure in my head. But I think I'm a little freed by that. That kids in my books can do whatever they want without the consequences that parents might bring on them. But really, it's just a matter of thinking back to that time, and I remember very distinctly what it was like to be 12 or 13, and the horrors of middle age or middle grade age. Yeah, I mean, it makes a mark, and I remember that, and I try and I channel that embarrassment and the horror and the crushes and as much as I can. But I do, there's one thing that I consciously do, and I sort of get into what I call my bossy middle grade voice. And it's sort of this, I mean, that sounds terrible, but it's sort of where 12-year-olds, they act like they know everything, but they don't know everything, but they want to know everything. Do you know what I mean? It's this push-pull time of, oh, my parents are so square, they don't know anything, and yet, who am I? And where do I fit in this world? So it's sort of like a private struggle and an outward bossiness with, oh, Mom, come on. So it's all of that rolled into one. So I call it my bossy middle grade voice is what I tell myself in my head when I'm writing.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about both reading and writing middle grade, because as you just described, it's such a fertile time in our lives as humans that all of us pass through, and there's so much change, and there's so much joy and tension and angst that it is a wonderful time period to both read and write.
And you can add an exclamation mark to every sentence. That's really what it is, right? I mean, everything is a huge deal, and oh my God, and put an exclamation point, and everything just matters so much, and you can't see past what's happening to you in that moment. But yet, you're starting to become part of a bigger world. And I think that's sort of the divergence between middle grade and YA. YA, you're out in the world more. Middle grade, you're just emerging from that cocoon, and who are you, and you want to split from your parents, but you still need them. And so they still figure into your life, but
Well, as writers, we feel like every book we write is important to us, at least, if to no one else. But as I read Fish Out of Water, I got the sense that this book in particular was special to you. So is that true? And if so, why?
The more I got into it, and the more when I read the arc when it came, I think it is important because of the message in it without being, preachy. I don't think there's enough books that tackle these subjects just yet. I think there are some coming, and it feels different, and it feels important to me right now. And talking about the Me Too movement and going back to where we can affect kids before stuff like that happens, and that's so important to me. So this book is important. Double Trouble was fun and great, and it's about being true to yourself, but this book feels a little more important for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a fun book. It's a fun book. It's totally a quick read.
Yes.
And I don't want anybody to be dismissive of it because it's a book for struggling readers. I mean, it's still a good story, and it's not, the great thing about the current books is, I hate even saying the expression dumbed down, but they're not dumbed down books.
No,
they're
not
different. They're just more simple language, but they're great books. They're great books. So even a kid who isn't struggling with reading, I think would enjoy it.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
51-year-old male who reads fairly well. I loved it. Fish Out of Water comes out September 22. Where can people buy it?
You can buy it anywhere you get your regular books online. Because they're the Currents books, they typically don't get into bookstores, into bricks and mortar stores, but you can order them from your indie bookstore, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, or the Orca website. You can buy directly from them too. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
So, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, where can people find you? Where are you on social media? What are your handles, contact info, that kind of stuff?
I'm on Twitter, but I don't use it much, and I'm on Instagram, and it's mostly my cats and my felting projects. But you can find me joannelevy.com, JoanneLevy.com, and you can find me from there.
Wonderful. Okay, well, here it is. It is time now for the big surprise. And you actually teed me up so perfectly, because what I wanted to tell everyone that's watching is not only is Joanne an incredible, talented writer, she also made this amazing felt creature. Joanne makes these amazing animals and oddities out of felt by hand. And this particular creature is a character from my wife, LISA MCMANN's book series, The Unwanteds. She's also a middle grade author. And this is Spike Furious, and Joanne custom made Spike for my wife, LISA. So Joanne, you have to tell our audience, how did you get into this? Where can people buy these amazing things? And do you do special orders? Tell us all about it.
Sure. Well, and it's funny because I'm sitting here at my my dining room table, and I actually have like all this wool sitting beside me, which I just dropped all over the floor. I got into needle felting. It just one of those craft. It's a long story, but one of those craft things I sort of fell into a couple of years ago after I moved to the country. And it's basically taking wool and these special needles, and you knit it all together, not with knitting needles, but felting needles. And I just really enjoyed the craft. It's a very tactile craft, and using wool. And it turned out I was pretty good at it, and I enjoy it.
So yeah, buy this stuff.
So I have an Etsy shop. It's called Wool Gathering Joe. So if you Google Wool Gathering Joe, or you can put it in your show notes at the bottom. Then I do blobfish, and I did a Bigfoot and just weird stuff. So if you check out my Etsy shop, you can see all the weird stuff that I make.
So amazing. Well,
thank you.
Oh yeah, you were so talented. Well,
Thank
that
you.
is it for this episode of Hey, I Know Them. And if you like this video, it would really help me out if you click subscribe and click the like button below. I put up videos once a week on book recommendations and writing advice and personal development. And now everybody go out and buy 4 copies of Fish Out of Water by the amazing Joanne Levy. Joanne, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Matt. This was great. Thank you.